Well, it's not often that I get to tell stories in math class, but since this section is entitled Critical Thinking in Everyday Life, I thought I would share a few stories that I've collected over the last few years that seem like they apply. So, one thing I like to do is whatever I'm teaching, I try to collect examples of as I come across them. And I think it's kind of like, when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you start seeing those cars on the road when maybe you never saw them before. So I think maybe that happens with some of these things in math, and I think maybe I'm just more observant of them as I'm teaching through these kinds of topics. All right, so here are a few stories. This is a comments section from an Instagram post, and this is, it was one of those, I wish I'd saved the original picture, but it was some sort of like a coffee mug, I think. Oops, it doesn't look like a coffee mug. And it had one of those cute little sayings on it. I think it was something like, "Good teachers are all little nuts." And I was scrolling through the comments, and this is the one that I noticed. And this stood out to me, and this teacher comments, "I'm very wackadoodle, so I must have been a great teacher." Right, so you can see there's a logical fallacy right here. And if you break this down, the saying on the mug is something like, all good teachers are a little nuts. So if we rewrite this, okay, this is that subject set would be good teachers, and the predicate set would be, you could say, people who are nuts. And then if you made a Venn diagram of this, you'd have this set of good teachers, and that would be a subset of the set people who are a little nuts. All right, so this person is saying, "I'm very wackadoodle." Right, so she's saying she's nuts, so we'll put an X in here. All right, so I must have been a great teacher. Okay, so multiple problems here. Just because she's nuts doesn't mean that she's in the set of good teachers. She could be, nuts, but not a good teacher. All right, so we kind of need to put the X between these two sets. Right, and then she's kind of going to these extremes here. So, even if it were the case that being nuts makes you a good teacher, it doesn't necessarily mean that being more nuts makes you a better teacher. So she probably was just joking, but it stuck out to me as a logical fallacy here and really bothered me, so I took a screenshot of it and saved it for you. My second story is something that happened to me when I moved to Lidditz a few years ago. In Lidditz, there are really only two major internet companies. There's a local one called Blue Ridge, and then there's one called Windstream. So I am name calling here, but Windstream is pretty notorious for their bad service. So when I moved in, I had a very specific budget in mind for what I wanted to pay for internet per month, and I didn't want to go over that amount. So I called around to the different options, Blue Ridge, Windstream. I think there may have been one other one that was some sort of a dial-up, but not Wi-Fi. But anyway, so Windstream was the last one that I called, and the customer service man gave me the price per month, and I just said, okay, thank you. Well, that's too expensive for me, but thank you for the information. And he got really angry with me, and basically said, well, what other options do you have? We're the cheapest one in the area. There is no better deal. You don't have any other options, so you need to sign up. There's really no other option. And he was trying to talk me into signing up with that argument. But this, I think for me, this felt like a sort of a missing information scenario, or perhaps he hadn't considered all of the options. So I just said, well, I'm sorry, I do have another option. It's to not purchase internet at all. And he just was silent and hadn't, considered that I might even say that. And he actually just hung up the phone and didn't even reply. But there was an example, in my life of somebody who was trying to persuade me into not considering all of the options. And I have one more story. This is a situation where um, I wouldn't say I fell for a scam, but I would say that it was a case of believing some fine print. And the deal really was too good to be true, and I kind of bought into this. So there was a spa, and I purchased some sort of a package for services. And the deal was if you purchased this package, then you could get in on this lifetime guarantee of the same service for the rest of your life at this sort of reduced rate option. I think it was like $40 a service or something like that. So the lifetime guarantee thing stood out to me, and that's all it really said. And I read the fine print, and it didn't seem like there were any tricks there. And I asked about it, and the owner said yes, that was true. As long as I wanted, they would provide the services at that rate. So about I don't know, 2 years later perhaps, I got this letter in the mail informing me that that this would not be the case anymore. And so this is the workaround that they used. The owner of the spa sold the company to her husband, and then she didn't reveal that. She just sent out a letter that said that she had sold the business and that the spa was under new ownership, and the new owners were not offering that agreement that she had offered. So everything was different, and of course the price skyrocketed. I think it was like 3 times as much. So I discontinued, that and never went back, for that service. But I did find out a little bit later that she had just sold it to her husband. So that's how I knew about that. But it certainly wasn't in the letter. But she actually continued to work there, so it wasn't really under new ownership. But that was, perhaps an example of, missing information in the fine print, or kind of me falling for that deal that was too good to be true. So here's your challenge. As you go throughout this course, or maybe you already have some ideas or examples, do you have any stories like this of situations where you have seen faulty logic in real life, or misleading information, or situations where a better grasp of logic and some better critical thinking skills would have been useful to you? So please share if you have any of those stories.